So, the President of the United States just signed an executive order that sounds like it came from a 1940s war room, calling it the Genesis Mission and comparing it to the Manhattan Project. Except this time, instead of building a bomb, we're building an AI system. And here's the part that doesn't add up. 40,000 scientists are being mobilized to work on artificial intelligence when we already have ChatGPT, Claude, and 1,000 AI startups burning through venture capital. So what exactly are 40,000 federal scientists going to do that Silicon Valley can't? Let me explain why this might be the most important tech story you're not paying attention to. Here's what's actually happening. Trump's Genesis mission isn't about building another chatbot. It's about connecting America's most powerful supercomputers, the ones sitting in places like Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Lawrence Livermore, to decades worth of federal data that nobody outside the government can access. We're talking about energy grid data, genomic databases, climate models, materials science research, and weapons testing simulations. This is the stuff that Silicon Valley has never been able to touch because it's locked behind security clearances and agency firewalls. And that means something very specific. Right now, companies like OpenAI and Google are training their AI models on the internet, on books, on Reddit threads, and YouTube videos. It's powerful, but it's also kind of like trying to learn advanced physics by reading Wikipedia. The Genesis mission is saying, what if we gave AI access to the actual lab notebooks? What if we trained foundation models on the raw experimental data from particle accelerators, fusion reactors, and drug trials that never made it to publication? The scale here is genuinely wild. The Department of Energy's Frontier supercomputer can perform 1.7 quintillion calculations per second. That's exaflops territory, which is a number so large it stops meaning anything until you realize it's roughly equivalent to the computing power of 1 million high-end gaming PCs working simultaneously. The Genesis mission is planning to network these machines together and point them at integrated federal datasets to accelerate discoveries in energy, biotechnology, and quantum computing. The initial budget is over $2 billion, with projections suggesting this could generate $500 billion in economic value by 2030 through public-private partnerships. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets interesting. This isn't really about beating Silicon Valley. It's about beating China. Because while American tech companies have been racing to build better language models and image generators, China has been quietly dominating what researchers call critical and emerging technologies. According to recent analysis, China leads in 57 out of 64 key technology fields, from advanced batteries to hypersonic missiles. America leads in 7. The Genesis mission is essentially the federal government looking at that scorecard and saying we're not playing the same game as Meta and Google anymore. We're playing the game China is playing, which is using AI to accelerate fundamental scientific breakthroughs that translate into manufacturing dominance, energy independence, and military superiority. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like a lot of government overreach and centralized control, you're not wrong to be nervous. Because embedded in this executive order is a fascinating contradiction. On one hand, mobilizing 40,000 experts from national laboratories like Oak Ridge, Los Alamos, and Oregon creates an unprecedented concentration of AI research capability. It's the kind of coordinated push that private companies, even the big ones, can't match because they're competing with each other. The Manhattan Project worked because everyone was pointed at the same goal with unlimited resources and no quarterly earnings calls to worry about. But on the other hand, what happens when you create a centralized AI platform trained on federal datasets? Who decides what problems it solves first? If this system can predict protein folding patterns that lead to new cancer treatments, that's incredible. If it can also predict social unrest patterns by analyzing census data and social media, that's Minority Report. The same tools that could give us cheaper solar panels and faster drug development could also enable surveillance capabilities that make today's privacy debates look quaint. Here's where the human story comes in, because this isn't an abstract policy debate. If the Genesis mission works, everyday Americans could see tangible changes surprisingly fast. Imagine your doctor using an AI trained on every cancer case study the National Institutes of Health has ever collected, not just the published ones, to design a personalized treatment plan. Imagine your electric bill dropping because AI discovered a new battery chemistry by simulating millions of molecular combinations on Department of Energy supercomputers, something that would have taken human researchers decades. Imagine quantum computers, which currently only work in billion-dollar labs, becoming practical tools because the Genesis mission cracked the materials science problems holding them back. But there's a darker timeline, too. Imagine that same centralized AI platform being used to optimize where law enforcement deploys resources, or to flag financial transactions that match patterns the government considers suspicious, or to predict which research directions get funding based on geopolitical priorities rather than scientific merit. The architecture of the Genesis mission doesn't just democratize innovation. It also centralizes power in ways we haven't seen since the Cold War. What makes this moment so strange is that we're having a 1940s-style conversation about national scientific mobilization in an era when most people assume innovation happens in startups and tech giants. Trump's executive order is essentially declaring that the era of letting the free market sort out AI development is over, at least when it comes to technologies that determine whether America remains a superpower. It's a bet that China's state-directed model of technology development is actually winning, and that America needs to respond with its own version, built on the foundation of national laboratories that have been quietly running the world's most powerful computers this whole time. So what does this mean for you tomorrow? If you work in biotech, energy, materials science, or quantum computing, the federal government just became your biggest potential collaborator and competitor. If you're concerned about privacy and government surveillance, the tools that could enable unprecedented intrusion just got a $2 billion down payment. And if you're simply trying to understand where technology is heading, realize this. The next breakthrough you hear about might not come from a Silicon Valley garage. It might come from a Department of Energy supercomputer in Tennessee, running simulations that no private company could afford or access. The Genesis mission isn't just policy. It's a declaration that the race for AI supremacy is fundamentally a race for scientific discovery, and America is finally treating it like the national security priority it actually is. Whether that leads to a new era of innovation or a new era of centralized control depends entirely on what happens next. Subscribe to Neural Nuggets for the latest updates in AI.